saying, are you able to hear me for some reason and see my screen? There was a couple of
yeah, Prabhu.
So sorry, Prabhu. It got live streamed 2 or 3 times. So I thought sometimes Zoom tend to disconnect. And once it happened to me before, so I just want to, okay. So Krishna is saying, thank you. So Krishna is saying, the person who is anapeksha suchir daksha, he is neutral. He is neither this side or the other side, and is pure and is clean and daksha, he's expert. And his udasina, carefree and free from distress. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between carefree and careless. So here Krishna is saying, the people who are careless, they're not dear to him. Just so we are clear. Krishna is saying that people who do not care for the fruits of the activities, carefree, they are not so much attached to the work they do. They want to do some service and they want to be sort of recognized. Actually, there are many devotees who in the recent past have come to me. Actually, if you see, any service you end up doing is your personal reciprocation to the Supreme Personality of Godhead from where you came from, because you are, Krishna is saying, Aham Bija Pradapita. That means Krishna is the seed-giving father of all of us. So when Krishna is the seed-giving father of all of us, and Aham Sarvasya Prabhu, that means Krishna, everything comes from Krishna. We have a designated duty to serve him. So when you're basically serving him, it's actually your personal recognition of where you came from. Hariparshad Prabhu says the number of rounds chanted is your personal offering to the Supreme. And there is, it's not a record or something you would like to kind of put a certificate around. So a lot of devotees in the recent past have come and have mentioned that, you know, they would like to offer their service in an anonymous manner. They do not want the name to be recognized, because we have to recognize that this is your personal offering. And there might be some other people who are hankering for glory and they end up, marketing their recognition. So we have to think in the topic of carefree. The person who is true devotee of the Supreme is totally carefree. He's not attached. And there are many devotees. I can go on, and really that's the reason why we try not to name devotees, because some devotees have mentioned not to recognize them in public because it's their reference, and they are very carefree. Udasina Gatavyatha, very profound devotees. And Sarvarambha Parityagi, they're detached from fruits of endeavor. So what Krishna is saying here is when a person has got a lot of money, he ends up building a house. And when he does the Griha Pravesh, he gives the best house as the temple room. So what that means is you will go to certain devotees' house, they will be living in a small house, but they will give the Lord's area the biggest. Likewise, if you go to a devotee who has a relatively bigger house, the biggest house in that devotee's house is actually the temple room. And you will go to non-devotee's house, you see just the opposite. They would place the lordships in a cupboard or a closet, which is not even a room by itself. So Srila Prabhupada in the purport says that this devotee who has a lot of money, he spends time, energy, not in constructing big buildings, but builds or helps in building a temple. He may construct a temple for the Lord. Sometimes we tend to think, why do we need a temple? And there are valid reasons from some preachers. But Srila Prabhupada says that temple, when you build, is a place of congregation. The amount of preaching you end up doing around a temple is significantly more than you doing temporarily in one place and where you go once a week. And that's the reason why it is mentioned, Beshla Prabhupada, whenever you have the means and ends, go construct a temple, as you can see in the last but one line. You do not build, you don't spend money to construct a big house for personal relations, but build a temple for the Lord, so that every day you could cater to the devotees. That's the reason why. And the voice of the ISKCON Pune, they have got a beautiful explanation of temple. T stands for what and E stands for what. And building a temple, constructing a temple, Srila Prabhupada, is a prominent thing in comparison to you building a big house for yourself, a big room for yourself in the house you are in. Always the biggest house in a room has to go to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You got everything from Him. So when the time to share the room comes, Lord should give him the biggest room. And then Krishna ends with saying, Yomad Bhakta Same Priya. These kind of devotees, the devotees who are neutral, who are clean, who are experts, who are carefree, not careless, and free from distress, detached from the fruits of endeavors, detached, which is very important. Sarvarambha Parityagi, that means who does it and he doesn't take the fruits of his service and is detached to the fruits of endeavors. These devotees are very. So if at all we all have some craving because we're not perfect, and this verse, so reawaken that feeling of how we should intermingle among the devotees, how we should consider our day-to-day lives, and how. So on this topic of being detached and our ability to be carefree, let's take some examples. As you know, Parikshit Maharaj, when he was cursed, he was about to die in few days. He didn't care for sense gratification, Parikshit Maharaj. He heard Srimad Bhagavatam from Sukadev Goswami. So he was carefree about his upcoming death. Think about a personality who is about to die. The first thing a person would end up doing is to sign papers so that these properties can go in the name of the son or daughter or whatever the case may be. But Parikshit Maharaj, when he knew that he is about to die, he took to Srimad Bhagavatam listening. What a way to die. Glorious death. When Bhaktitirtha Maharaj had cancer and he was hearing Kirtan, Radhanath Maharaj came and asked, he was there in that gathering. He asked, how do you feel? Because they were buddies at the time. And at the time, Bhaktitirtha Maharaj was hearing Kirtan and he mentions, it can't get better than that. A person who is in tremendous pain because of aggravated cancer, after hearing the Harinam in his ear, is reciprocating that it can get better than that. And you might have also heard about Gaur Govind Maharaj. He used to have so much pain in his hand, legs, everywhere there will be a lot of pain. So there will be 4 devotees, and Maharaj at that time was a bit bulky. So 4 devotees would lift Maharaj up in his Bhubaneswar. They will carry him all the way and put him under his in Vyasasana. Until that time, Maharaj will be tremendous. And then he will give the Srimad Bhagavatam Katha in the morning after Mangalarti. And the Srimad Bhagavatam Katha will go for 4 hours, 5 hours. We are doing Srimad Bhagavatam Katha for 30 minutes. Still, we have very limited understanding. But Maharaj will do Srimad Bhagavatam for 5 hours. He will not move because he can move, of course. But devotees, foreigners, they will never move from the ISKCON Bhubaneswar. And at that time, Maharaj will be full of energy. He was absolutely carefree from distress, free from distress. He was totally distress free when he was giving class. And then when they're taking back, all the pain will restart because he was not keeping good health at the time. Srila Prabhupada, if you have seen the final days in this planet of Srila Prabhupada in this planet, he was in tremendous pain. And actually, Srila Prabhupada in his life had a lot of distressing moments. And we can go on and on, but just staying for the time being on the distress he had at the end of his life. But at that time, what was Srila Prabhupada doing? He was translating Srimad Bhagavatam so that people like us can take benefit of the greatest scripture in the whole world, Srimad Bhagavatam translations, when he was in the final days. He was free from distress. He was free from distress. And then Srila Prabhupada, when he was coming in Jaladuta, he had multiple heart attacks. And he wrote this poem, but we're going to read only one stanza of this poem, which is the 15th stanza, which is very profound. Srila Prabhupada writes in this poem, Aniya choyadi prabhu amare na chate, na chao prabhu, na chao simate. Kashtera putali jatha, na chao simate, anicho jadi prabhu, amare na chate. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So he writes, oh Lord, I'm just a puppet in your hands, because if you send me in Jaladuta, you just send me as a puppet. So if you have brought me here in Boston in 1965 to dance, then make me dance. At the time in 1965 in September, Srila Prabhupada was not a prominent person, if you think about it. Materially speaking, in terms of preaching, he had a lot of content inside, but it has not taken shape. And he was 69 years. 69 years. And then he says, if you have brought me here to Boston to dance, then make me dance. Make me dance. Oh Lord, make me dance as you like. So he was free from distress. He was totally surrendered. When you are in that level of surrenderness, you're totally carefree. If you have played the game of cricket, and if you have played with heavy leather balls, and the ball hits you once, twice, thrice, 4 times, there is a bit of a pain. But after 3 times, 4 times of the ball hitting your rib cage or wherever, at least I have been through that, it doesn't really, you get insulated from the pains. You become so fearless that you're not really worried about a bouncer or whatever. You play fearlessly. At that time, when Srila Prabhupada came, he had nothing to lose, actually. He just came with very little. And there are many such people who come with so much of difficulty. But Srila Prabhupada had complete surrender. That's the difference. And he imbibed this verse so much that when you think about this verse, all the traits which is mentioned here was with Srila Prabhupada. So what a life he led. What a life he gave us to imbibe. And he was totally surrendered. At the time, Srila Prabhupada hadn't started ISKCON. He just landed in 1965. He started ISKCON in 1965, 66. 1 year after that, he didn't have anything. But he had the complete surrenderness. He was neutral. He didn't think that a person who is born in India could take to Krishna consciousness. He was neutral. He was very clean. His method of preaching is pure clean. And he was an expert in everything, but just that people hadn't seen his expertise. He was carefree and free from distress after taking heart attacks, and he was totally detached. So, and these personalities become fearless. They Nobody can scare them. These are the traits which is which should be taught. If it, I'm sure it is taught in some form or another in management schools, in order to really make yourself ruthless in your management strategy or wherever you work. If you have these qualities, you'll be very successful. Sometimes what happens is there is competition and people get torn up when there is a bit of a bullying in some form in a workplace or in school. But if you take to these verses of Bhagavad Gita, you'll be totally immune, you'll be totally insulated. Nobody can really say anything and which can hamper your success. So very powerful verse for all of us to imbibe. And that is where this Bhakti Yoga devotional service, there is a chapter in Srimad Bhagavatam, 22nd chapter, sorry, 29th chapter in the 11th canto. 11th canto is about general science, and the Bhakti Yoga is the 29th chapter. And there, Lord says, the Lord here states that the most intelligent and clever person is the devotee who offers his temporary. He knows that this body or his place in this world is temporary. In Bhagavad Gita, it is mentioned this place is Dukkhalaya Asaswatam. Dukkhalaya is a place of misery, and Asaswatam is temporary. So a true devotee understands that we are all here temporarily. Life is a preparation, death is examination, and no one knows the examination date. Very temporary. And it is illusory material body and possession to him with love and without personal motivation. So anytime we are immune to these traits of personal motivation, these are the qualities which makes Lord likes us, make Lord love us. And so the traits of a devotee who is dear to the Lord has recognized the position that we are living in a temporary world. Trying to build castles in this temporary world is not going to help us. These kind of devotees, they're not craving for money or glories or any form of praise from anyone, because this is so temporary and so illusory. The once you become immune to this, then you can face the world with so much of strength. That's the reason why Bhagavad Gita is a strength-giving scripture. More and more we dwell on it, more and more we discuss about it. It gives us the element of strength to face anything, anywhere, anytime, whether it is job or temple. And this is where sometimes people think renunciation is a weak thing. It is actually from frustration, and sometimes people think, this person couldn't do well in the exams, he couldn't get a good position in a professional college, and that's the reason why he is renunciated. So Chaitanya Charan Prabhu mentions in one of his periodicals, he says, renunciation is not a function of frustration, but fruits of devotion. So this is where renunciation is misunderstood. As you can see in this picture, there is a sadhu who is not regulated. He has not resorted to the process of ABCD, which is told to us. He doesn't have good association of devotees. He has not. What is regulation? You come to United States and you have to drive in the right side of the road. That is regulation. In our life as well, we need some regulation. If this sadhu who mentions, who is actually resorting to smoking, and he is calling himself a sadhu, in Prabhupada's language, he is not. So that renunciation is a renunciation through frustration, because they're not successful because of doing something good. But the fruits of devotion, when you understand Bhagavad Gita, when we dwell on these festivals, we engage ourselves in festivals in doing some service, or we take to reading or hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, we cultivate the seeds of devotion. And when the seed of devotion grows within us, then we realize that the Friday potlucks, which some of us were having, or those get-togethers, the mundane get-togethers where people discuss politics, why the stock went from A to B, and so on, you feel it's not truly worth it. You provide, you recognize the importance of detachment from those mundane talks. You renunciate. So as the devotion grows, you recognize who is something you should associate with and who is something you should dissociate with. So the renunciation is not just going to Himalayas. Renunciation is a function or is a fruit of devotion, not frustration. And this is exactly why the devotees are often misunderstood by many people, because they think this person is renouncing. Some of the devotees who are brahmacharis on our temple, they are from very bright schools, they're very bright individuals. It's not that they have joined this out of frustration, they're very successful. But it is the fruits of devotion which is so profound, which gets them there. So there has to be some element of regulation. Otherwise, we will not have the right mindset. And as the seed of devotion, Bhaktilata Bij, grows among us, automatically the detachment for things will happen. Detach from fruits of endeavor will happen. Instead of building big buildings or big apartments in India or wherever, you'd route your funds to the temple, to the festivals, and this detachment from fruits of endeavors is going to culminate in your behavior, and you'll end up becoming very, very dear to Krishna. So I can go on and on. It's already 7:45. I'd like to open up for some discussion because this is such a powerful verse. We have to discuss it because Bhagavad Gita is a frequently asked question, and it can only empower our life through a discussion. So we'll like to discuss, take your comments. If you have any corrections, please open up. If you have any reflection, please speak so that we can end our Bhagavad Gita class. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Any questions, comments, reflections? Anyone? Any additions based on this verse? I see some.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam, all Vishla Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna Jagdisima Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam, all Vishla Prabhupada. Good to see you again today after yesterday. How are you today?
Yeah, good Prabhu. Very nice class, Prabhu.
Vishla Prabhupada. Any comments, Prabhu? How we have to dovetail in recognize, or rather internalizing this words into our lives? And any thoughts you could like to add, Prabhu?
I probably like at the first point in the purport, Prabhupada writing for the devotee, not just struggling for the money, but it comes its own way. So, like how to understand that the part it comes own way, because if we talk to outside, right, they think how the money will come its own way. So
Right. Yes, Prabhu. So that money part, right, Prabhu? You uh, talked about. So what Srila Prabhupada is saying here is whenever we try to work for getting money, we get too much attached to the money. What I mean by that is if you do not get the money, we become very frustrated. Radhanath Maharaj says that do your service, don't get attached to your service. What it is meant that if somebody is doing samosa or pizza, for example, in Govindas, he gets so much attached to making samosa and pizza that next time he's not given that service, he's asked to make dal, he gets frustrated. So he says, do your service, don't get attached to your service. So that aspect of craving for money you mentioned, Prabhu, is also related to us, because we sometimes get too much carried away with the devotional service, and then we think this devotional service is mine and nobody has the rights to it. And that is where Radhanath Maharaj's view. So the point you talked about in terms of craving for money, nobody is saying, see, whatever money we're going to get based on the work we end up doing will come. But sometimes we get too much agitated by the seeking. So Srila Prabhupada is very much against the Babaji concept that you don't do the work. Srila Prabhupada wants to bring up this KC, Krishna consciousness, in the household. So we have to go to work, we have to earn some money. But if instead of X, we get Y, and we shouldn't get perturbed by it. Did that add to your thoughts, Prabhu? Jagdish Prabhu?
yeah, Prabhuji, they're very nice. Because just to adding the point, I'm hearing the Lal Govind Prabhuji Katha. On this point, I'm recalling. So how he was saying that, like he was saying that comparing the problems in the life, right, the disease or the other problems. So how he was saying that, he was saying in such a way, like these problems we don't want, it still comes. It comes by even we put so much effort, but we cannot avoid it.
Right.
So
True.
he was saying same way the money also, it will come. It will for the devotee. So he was saying that like in short word, तुम कृष्णा के नाम पे, कृष्णा तुम्हारे काम पे.
True.
So he was saying that if you come that stage, money automatically will come fellow. But he experienced that way. So he told that my experience, Prabhu, I experienced, but we should not, like just you said, not to worry about that much part too much. Like the problem comes, even you saw so much arrangement and that, but you cannot avoid. The same way, this also comes its own way.
Right. Exactly. So on that note, right, Prabhu? So when Srila Prabhupada was on his last few days, he was on pain, but as he was diverting his attention to translating Srimad Bhagavatam, his focus was getting diverted. Say, for example, a person who is taking non-vegetarian, for example, but once he sees a higher taste in the nice prasadam we end up giving in our temple, so he gets automatically attracted. Why they have resorted to eating non-prasadam items? Because they have not seen higher taste. So the Srila Prabhupada's basic medicine for this is if you have got a higher taste, then all this craving, the anarthas, the regulation, all of that which is being spoken will all go away. It's just that we haven't got the right environment around which to build that higher taste. And once we have a community in our temple, have the right association, then we recognize how awful those tastes were and how great Krishna Prasadam or Jagannath Prasadam or Gaur Prasadam is. So higher taste is very, very important. I just want to add to your point. what you just mentioned, making Krishna work for us. Because the people who join Krishna consciousness is not as if they have given up anything in that sense, but they get so much more that other things which they were practicing or doing or whatever appears very insignificant. Okay, Prabhu?
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Any other comments, additions?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, always to Srila Prabhupada. It was a wonderful class, Prabhuji, and I just had a question on one of the answers that you just gave now. So you mentioned about the example where certain devotees, like, they get attached to a certain kind of service, and when once they switch to a different service, they are like little upset. So I was just trying to understand, like, attachment with a devotional service activity is different than having an attachment to a material activity, right? So attachment to a devotional service activity should be considered as transcendental, because that is actually bringing us closer to Krishna, right? So I mean, it's good, right? Not bad.
Initially, great question, Mataji. So the question Mataji is asking is attachment to a devotional service considered better in comparison to attachment to a material activity? Well, see this sadhana bhakti, what we profess, this process of chanting, even if you have taken initiation or you have not taken initiation, it doesn't matter. But as you associate more and more and more, our bhakti taste buds keep increasing better and better and better. And it's all because of association of the devotees. So it's not a question of it's a question of perennial association. As your perennial association increases, your taste changes. I mean, personally speaking, or anybody who has been in Krishna consciousness, they will vouch for the fact that what they were as an individual 5 years ago, they are probably slightly better off. So initially, Mataji, what you said is right. But as you put more years, then you recognize that you are doing bathroom cleaning, you are doing temple cleaning. So the so-called attachment to doing a Brahminical service or a bhoga, that so-called superior complex, if I may, what you have, will slowly go away, and you will recognize that cleaning the bathroom in the temple is as good as a service as doing bhoga for the lordships. So the initial thing what you said is right, but as you put more years in sadhana bhakti, you'll realize that just getting attached to a so-called superior devotional service and thinking that cleaning the bathroom in a temple is an inferior devotional service, so that attachment will slowly go away. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, Prabhuji. Actually, my question was not actually around that superior and inferior devotional service. My question was actually very general, like in terms of if we, like any service, like, I mean, if suppose somebody is doing cooks well, like is like great at cooking, so he was given the cooking service, and then he was put in a different service, like maybe let's say the DT, whatever the DT service. But the thing is, like, cooking is something that person is like more like expert at, and that's why he's attached to that like service. So I mean, so definitely he will develop naturally, because it's some kind of attachment towards that devotional service activity. So I'm just trying to understand that attachment. Is it good, or is it that no, that's fine, even if I'm expert at cooking, if I'm given the DT worship also, like I should be, I mean, that feeling of that attachment towards that cooking service, is that wrong to have in this situation, or is it right?
Yeah, so this serving, right? If everybody takes to serving whatever they like or whatever they think they're expert in, what will happen is, in order for anything in a temple to come to a shape, or a festival to come to a shape, you need everybody to complement each other. So it is done for the pleasure of the Supreme. It's not done for the pleasure of your liking or fames and fancies, if I may what. So you may consider that, and if there is no not if there is availability and you have certain liking, what you said is absolutely right. But a time will come, so with certain big festivals, then there is a set of bodies or set of devotees will have to come together to complement each other, in the sense that sometimes a service which you may like, you may have too many devotees who are liking it, and you are not picked for some reason, and you are diverted to something else. At that time, your attachment angle is tested. And at that time, we have to recognize that we have to work for a bigger cause, a higher taste of making the festival a success. Or so in that context, Mataji, getting attached to that devotional service is probably not as good as being detached to and just being open to doing something which is for which. So the big picture is the essence, Mataji. Does that help in any way?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah, wonderful answer. So from the management standpoint, if you look at it, definitely the whole goal here in the temple is to do everything, all the services for the pleasure of the Lord.
Right.
So anything based on the given situation and circumstance, like whatever service is given, definitely there's no doubt about it. That's what will be done. But that thought just came to my mind, like if we develop attachment towards material activity versus attachment towards a devotional service activity. So that's why I had, but
Right.
I totally get it. So that attachment is good, but not in all the circumstances, like
Right.
depends on the situation. Yeah.
Right. And these classes, Mataji, this discussion we're having, these are based on principles, and how we take it and implement it is based on principles. So the higher principle is the complementary aspect we talked about, and how we implement it is very practical application of bhakti, and that is when we can discuss about specifics. But this is the higher principle of not getting too much attached to anything for that matter. And once we build that detachment, we will not be unhappy at all. And the people who are the happiest persons in the world are the people who are not attached to anything. They are just insulated from this attraction, and they happen to be very, very blissful. They do not have headaches, and they just lead a very calm, composed life. All right. Any other comments?
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji.
Yeah.
If there is no comments, we can end here.
Yeah. Thank you, Hemajaganath Prabhu. It's a wonderful topic, and especially this chapter. And these verses are known as Bhakta Ashtagam. This last 8 verses are known as Bhakta Ashtagam. In these verses, Lord clearly explains and details who is very dear to him. So basically, overall, in the entire 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Bhakti Yoga is the essence of the entire chapter. And out of this Bhakti Yoga, these 8 verses are very important in a sense. And out of those all verses, and there is one verse which is concluded, the essence of everything concluded in the 18th chapter, 64th verse, Manmana Bhavamat Bhaktau Matyaji Mam Namaskaro. And that's the essence of everything. That's very nicely Krishna leads to that point of Bhakti Yoga. Thank you so much, Hemajaganath Prabhu. Yeah, I mean, even the case of attachment, even this is a very subtle aspect of it. When we know that even in the sannyasi stage, sannyasis are not allowed to stay more than 3 days in a single place. They have to travel. Vrindavan and Sri Rupa Goswami, they were even under the trees. They won't sleep more than a day under a tree because of naturally our tendency or subtle form of it that we develop the attachment to it. This a subtle way of it, and when it comes to selfish and selfless service, there are two kinds of. One is selfish and another is selfless. Selfless is service that which we perform to the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, no matter what we put. That attachment is very good to please the Krishna. But sometimes what happens because of attachment, we try to please ourselves. Yeah, I'm doing good, so I get some name, fame, all those things. That is not recommended. That's what is the Prabhuji was mentioning about the attachment here. That we should not attach to our own way of doing things or put ourselves in the center, so that if I don't get that service, I'm bewildered, disturbed, and all those things. We should always ready to serve any service to Krishna. Yeah, wonderful. The devotees, anything else? Anybody else has anything to add? Any other comments? Okay, so if there is nothing else, then let's conclude today's session. Sunday Gadashi. Yes. Anybody would like to add anything? I heard some sound. Okay. So let's conclude today's session. Thank you, Hemajaganath Prabhu, for a nice class. Let's pray together. Let's pray our obeisance to all the assembled Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. Vancha kalpatarubhashya vasindhyavacha vidana devyo namaha Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Sri Gita ki jai. Pada ki jai. Gaudiya Vaishnava
Jai.
Gaura Premanande Hari Hari.
Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you, everybody. Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Jagannath.
Prabhuji. Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
everyone.
Hare
Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.